Mark Stone's goal, one of four straight Vegas ripped off to close the second period and take control of the game.
That's Fox's Eric Messersmith. Jonathan Marchessault was voted the playoff MVP for the Golden Knights. I'm Dave Anthony, and this is Fox News.
All right, and we are back here on WDXE, AM 1370, 105.3 FM, also around the world at WDXE.com, and on YouTube and Facebook. And we are awaiting our guest this morning. It is Wednesday morning, the 8 o'clock hour, and we're going to call it Friends and Neighbors, Friends and Neighbors with Jeff Hood on Wednesday mornings. And I'm expecting Clint Alley in. He sent me a text message. He's running just a little bit late, but he ought to be in here any minute. So you're kind of stuck with me for the moment and looking through things here. We had a little broadcast trouble early, but Roger Wright was with us just a few minutes ago, and he got all things working again, back up like it should be. And we are in the studio live here on WDXC, and again on Facebook and YouTube. I'll take just a minute to tell you that this hour, of course, is brought to you by my services with Keller Williams, Keller Williams Hood Company, real estate, powered by Keller Williams. And we're located right across from Duncan's Market. You know where we are. Right across there from Duncan's Market in the shopping center. People know it as the Susu's Shopping Center sometimes. Right behind that pretty ice machine is what I say. Also, my Hood and Hester Realty and Auction Company office is there as well. And we do real estate. And there he comes. There he comes. He's bounced in here just like he knows what he's doing. You can sit anywhere you like. You can put on the headphones. And I've got Mr. Clint Alley. And, you know, I've decided to call this hour. I don't know if you know. Do you know what we've been doing here at WDXE, what's happened?
I don't.
Let me turn that on. There, say that again.
I don't know what's happened.
Well, we've gone to an all-talk format for the most part. And the 8 to 9 o'clock hour is the local hour, and we've got different people that host Monday through Friday. Wednesday happens to be my day.
Awesome.
And I've decided to call it Friends and Neighbors with Jeff Hood. How about that? And you happen to be a neighbor.
That's right.
You happen to be a neighbor and a friend. That's right. And so I'm thinking that we just might have guests in to get to know, find out a little bit about them, their background, family, all that kind of stuff. And I know you're probably expecting me to ask you a lot of questions about history, and we might get to that.
Sure.
We might get to that. But what I really want to do is get to know you.
Well, excellent.
A little bit about you and your background, where you come from, who you are, my grandmother used to ask people, who's your mama?
Well, I'm sure glad to be here, Jeff. I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. You and I, even though we know each other, haven't talked a lot. I see you walking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
In our neighborhood, and
you
so
walk a lot.
That's right, you do, and I need to do some of that myself, by the way. But let's get a little background on you.
Sure.
You are let's see, were you in school when Missy was in school?
I was, yes, sir. I graduated Lawrence County High School in 2002.
2002. So you're at an age of
39.
39 and holding.
That's
huh?
right. Yeah.
All right,
Probably
and
will be for several years.
And your mom and dad are
Doug and Martha Alley.
Doug and Martha Alley. Now, I know Doug. Now he's got the.
His business is septic tank pumpers.
Right, septic tank pump. Now, did he take over for Bud?
No.
Okay, that was different.
Yeah. Different,
all right. Well, I meant to ask that before, but I forgot. Anyway, but he's been doing that a good long while.
He's been doing it about 21 years, I believe.
Yeah. And your mom is
Martha Alley.
Martha Alley. What does she do?
She is retired.
She's retired.
Yeah, from the school system. She was the registrar at Lawrence County High School for several years.
Okay.
And she's been retired for, I guess, about 5 or 6 years now.
Well, good deal.
So
good deal.
She's loving it.
And you have children?
I do. I've got 3 daughters.
3 daughters.
3 daughters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna have to get busy now and keep up with our friend Jacob Yoder. He's got 5 daughters.
Oh my goodness.
He's our neighbor back behind me.
Yeah,
Do you know Jacob?
Yeah, he's a good
They
guy.
just had their 5th daughter. I held her yesterday.
Wow,
Little
that's
bitty
wonderful.
infant baby, and he's wanting the boy so bad. That's his 5th girl.
He wants a Jacob Jr.
Yeah, he would like to have a Jacob Jr. But anyway, so you have 3 little girls. Now, how old are they?
Well, I have Hannah. She is 8. Molly is about to be 7, and Ella is 3. So they're all little girls.
So you're born and raised here in Lawrenceburg.
Yes, sir.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up out in Deerfield.
So you're out there still in that same neck of the woods.
Yeah, right there where I live. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, good deal. Well, good deal. So you came through high school, and what were your interests?
Well, I've always been interested in history. That's something.
That's obvious.
Yeah, yeah, that was from an early age. I've started. I guess I developed an interest in that in Doris Lyles' class in the 5th grade, and she was an outstanding teacher. She.
I remember. Yeah, I know her.
Oh, she's a precious lady. She is, and she's turned a lot of kids on to history. I think she had such a great way of teaching it, and so I started an obsession that I guess has not ever ended.
Yeah, you're very, very much into. I was looking at your Facebook page here, and you've gotten into quite a lot of things.
Oh yeah, stay busy.
Yeah, of course, a Christian man, a follower and a believer in the Lord, and amen to that. Husband, father, writer, genealogist.
Yeah.
Now that's a new one on me. I didn't know this about you.
Oh yes, I love genealogy. It's probably about the time I got interested in history. I got interested in genealogy.
We were just talking about it's today is Family History Day.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I've always looked to see what we can celebrate every day, and today happens to be Family History Day on this
need to
little
get a cake or something.
page that we look at. So I'm assuming that you went through your family history.
I have, yes, sir. Well, I continue to. It's a process that'll probably never.
So how
end.
far back have you gotten?
Well, I think I'm trying to remember here. A couple of generations have gotten back to the mid to late 1600s. Documented ancestors who lived in Pennsylvania, and I've had several ancestors in the Revolutionary War, and several in the Civil War, and so it's an ongoing process. Though it's the thing about it, you're never really done.
Yeah, I would imagine. I'd imagine so. Now, of course, your family branches. So, so the lineages that you followed through your father and mother, or both, or
both sides. Yeah.
Okay.
The furthest back is the one I was talking about, the Rue family in Pennsylvania. That's through my father's side.
Okay.
He had his grandmother was from Indiana, so I have a lot of relatives from up north in that branch. But,
Okay.
So, and it's just once you get started, it becomes an obsession. You can't really stop. Of course, once I got married, I started doing my wife's too, so that added to it.
So you just got plenty. You got plenty to do.
I do, yes.
You got plenty to do. Well, I was looking through your Facebook page and saw a couple of pictures there that kind of was interesting to me. There was where is it? Right here. You're into gardening a little bit?
Yeah, I started getting into gardening in 2020. I think a lot of people got into gardening in 2020 during the pandemic because you're at home. I remember Duncan said they sold out of a lot of seeds in 2020.
Yeah.
And I had kind of casually tried to grow some things here and there before then, but then when I really had the time to put into it, I just really loved it. And it's interesting to me because it kind of dovetails into family history in a little way, because most of our ancestors were farmers.
Okay.
And they grew things, and so it's interesting to see or to continue that tradition of growing things. And so I do enjoy gardening. I'm not that good at it yet. I'm still trying, but I'm hoping. I've got a few years left to garden, and I'm hoping.
Well,
I
the
can
pictures
get good.
I'm seeing here, are you doing some traditional gardening, or are you doing some different things, or?
Well, I've tried something new. I think you're looking at my
I'm looking at your
trellis.
Your trellis you put here, and some boxes up there with it. So yeah.
Yeah, I went to Disney World this spring for the first time. We took the girls down there, and I noticed in the Epcot Center they have a greenhouse, and they have I guess it's a ride called In the Land or Being with the Land. I can't remember the name of it, but
Okay.
you could see they had some trellises on that ride where they had watermelons and pumpkins and cantaloupes actually growing from the trellis.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so I thought I'd like to try that. That looks interesting because you don't, normally you see those just on the ground. And so I thought, well, if they will run up a trellis, I'm assuming if you could watch it and make sure that you get get them properly netted and secured to that trellis as they grow. Maybe they would just hang down like a tree. So we're going to try.
You're going to try it? So this is a current experiment.
It is. I've not done this before.
So you got some watermelon vines that may grow up a trellis. Is that what we're saying?
I do, yeah.
So we have a watermelon tree.
Yes. I took a hay ring, an old hay ring that we had on the farm there, and I built a frame underneath it to kind of lift it off the ground, and it's made
It's really neat.
about a 7-foot archway.
That's creative.
Thank you.
That's very creative. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
It was a lot of fun. I hope we get some good, if I grow good watermelons, I'll bring them back and report in.
Well, you may have a neighbor to come by and see your watermelons. How about
there
that?
you go.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, that kind of brings me to something else I want to talk to you about. And we will get to the history part,
Sure.
because that's an interesting thing all in itself. But you've gone through some transition physically.
Oh, yes, that's right.
In a big way. A lot of people kept up with it. Did you write about it too?
I have written about it. I was blogging about it until my third daughter was born, and then it's funny. I went back and looked at it the other day. The last post I made on it, I think, was the week before she was born.
Yeah.
After that, life got really busy, and I haven't.
You
kept up
titled it
with
something. I forget what it was.
Half the Guy.
Half the Guy.
Yeah,
That's right. I remember looking at that.
It's still there at halftheguy.com. if you wanna see it.
Halftheguy.com.
Yeah.
And you probably got a lot of following on that.
I did, yeah. That was interesting. It's been actually about 5 years ago this month. I found out I have type 2 diabetes. And
Okay.
at the time, I think it was over 400 pounds. I weighed about 410 pounds
Wow.
at my heaviest. It may have been a little less at that point, but at my heaviest, it was 410. And, of course, that led directly to the diabetes. I didn't have that before I
Yes.
overate so much. And so I realized I had to make some changes, or I would die and probably lose my vision, lose my feet, go through all
so
manner
many
of
things.
awful things, with
Yeah.
diabetes. So my wife knows a lot about it. She's a pediatrician at Just for Kids here in town and in Pulaski, and so she had a lot of knowledge about what you need to eat and what kind of activities you need to do. And so she was instrumental in that. And basically, I cut back my calories, started eating smaller portions.
Yeah.
I went to not no carbs, but less carbs.
Yes.
I try to limit the number of carbs I take in per day to, and I can't remember the number. It's on the website.
Yeah.
But it's a particular number that I shoot for. Big thing was journaling, writing down what I eat, keeping track of it, and showing it to Christy every day so she could be sort of an accountability partner.
Right.
She's a good one because she doesn't let me get away with much.
True.
But I had, over the process of that, I guess I went from 410 to, by the summer of 2020, I was at 220. So I lost nearly 200 pounds.
Wow.
Just doing that and exercising. Like you said, you see me walking all the time.
You are the walking man.
Yeah. I walk about 5 to 7 miles a day, try to.
Yeah.
It's more difficult sometimes. Like right now we have VBS going on, so
Yeah.
I don't get my evening walk in this week. But yeah, it's and of course, with anything else, it fluctuates. It's gone up and down, and
But a remarkable journey there. And how long did it take you?
It took me a little over a year, I guess, to get most of that weight off.
Yeah.
So it was, not overnight by any means, but still, it was a lot faster than I thought it would be. Because I tell you, that's one thing that when I was up to, I went through a process of, I had all these red flags that I ignored.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's easy to do.
It is.
And so one of those was I went to weigh myself one day, and the scale had an error message, and it was because I weighed more than the scale would read.
Oh, wow.
And so
Wow.
I had to order a special scale, and I thought, I should have noticed at that point it's time to do something,
Yeah.
if you have to.
Yeah.
And I have a list of these things. Like I think at work I wouldn't fit into a Santa Claus costume.
Yeah.
I think Santa Claus is well known for being fat. And so.
Well, you were young and still, even though maybe overweight, you were probably relatively healthy, or at least felt like you were, you know. And I've been there myself. Of course, I'm overweight even now, but I'm not going to make this conversation about me. But I need to lose some weight terribly bad, and you're an inspiration to those that could, to make it happen.
Well, I appreciate it. I've tried my best to stick with it. I tell you, my problem is the walking is I enjoy walking. I enjoy the exercise part. Getting out in the garden and getting out and doing stuff on the farm. I really love doing that. It's the eating that's hard to control because we live in a place that's blessed with great food everywhere.
Yeah, it's so convenient too
Yes.
to eat. It's just that's what we do.
Exactly.
Hey, we may have somebody that wants to ask a question or talk
awesome.
about it. I don't know. We'll see.
Awesome.
We don't mind taking phone calls. Hey, good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Good morning. I was wondering, the guy that had the guineas on there for sale, I was wanting to get his number. It's 201 something. I thought it was 3815, but that ain't right.
Well, I do keep those numbers. Let me just find him right quick. I've got him right here. Let's see. He is 201-1835.
1835.
Yeah, 201-1835.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. All right, a guinea call.
Hey, that's awesome. Guineas are awesome birds.
Do you have any guineas at your place?
I don't know. I don't. I keep wanting to get some chickens. My wife's dad was a chicken farmer down in Anniston, Alabama, and so she looks at these small flocks as small potatoes. So she doesn't understand why I'd want to have just a few.
By the way, if you would like to talk to us or talk to Clint here this morning, you have any questions or like that, the number is 931-766-9393. We'll take your calls on that. So we got through a little bit of that. You got yourself healthy, and during all this, you are quite a historian.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
And I mean that sincerely. But you focused some study quite a bit on just Lawrence County, did you not?
I have, yes.
Well, and written a book. The name of your book is?
It's Lawrence County History Trivia.
Lawrence County History Trivia. Well, what's been some of the most interesting things that you found out about Lawrence County that maybe not everybody would know?
That's a good question.
I bet it is.
Of course,
I don't know.
It's hard to narrow it down for me because it's all so interesting. Well, I'll tell you background on that. I've always loved local history, I remember reading Bobby Alford's column in the Advocate
Oh, yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
And, I love those, and I had some of Miss Kathy Niedergesess's things that she put out with her newsletter she does. And so I started in 2013 a Facebook page called Lawrence County History Trivia.
Okay.
And it was a just kind of a, hey, let's do this just for fun and see what happens. Well, I think it's up to over 3,500 followers at this point, and that's awesome. I love doing it. At one point, I was doing a new post every night or every other night, and of course, that's when I had no daughters. So now that I have 3 little ones, I don't do as much of the posting on there as I did, but I hope to get back to it someday.
Yeah, you got almost 4,000 followers on that page.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, and people love to see the history of things that they see every day. Because it's one thing to talk about something that happened like at Gettysburg or at Valley Forge, and that's
Right.
far away, and that's interesting. But I think there's a special thing about, hey, this street right here, I drive this every day, and I had no clue that it was 200 years old.
Right.
So, as far as some of the most interesting things that I've found out, well, again, I'm trying to narrow it down, and that's really difficult.
So many areas.
I know.
There are all these communities. And
I should have brought a copy of the book.
what would be?
so I could
Is there?
look in.
You may know this. What would be the oldest settled area in Lawrence County?
I believe the oldest settled area is the community of Henryville.
Henryville.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's there were settlers there, when Lawrence County became a county, and a lot of those folks I hate to say they were squatters, but they predated whites. The white settlement pattern starting in 1817. Well, little background. Most of Lawrence County became part of Tennessee, or became under the Tennessee government by the Chickasaw Cession of 1816, which is in the fall of 1816, and so that was a treaty where the government bought. It was a huge tract of land. It goes from, I think, roughly Russellville, Alabama, up to, kind of northwest of Columbia, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And it's just a big swath of land. And if you total it out, I believe the price for that all was 2 cents an acre.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for all of, most of Lawrence County and, pretty much all that territory there, including Lauderdale County, Alabama, which is, I'd love to have 2 cents an acre of land in Florence right now, wouldn't you?
Yes. We would buy all we could get.
Yes, we would.
We would spend all our money on that.
Yes, but so before that treaty, there were a lot of white settlers in the area, which was the problem for the Chickasaw because they still held title to this area, but they had no way of forcing these people out. They had no army, they had no mechanism to do that. So there was, at one point, the United States Army actually came through Shoal Creek, and they ran the squatters off in 1809.
So the squatters were who?
There was actually one of the most prolific ones was a guy named Beeler, which of course we have a creek named after him. And
Yeah.
He was one of the first commissioners of the county, and so he was here in 1809 near Lawrenceburg. They printed this list that I have a copy of it somewhere called Intruders on Shoal Creek. And
Okay.
what they did basically is they said you're trespassing on Indian land. You're not supposed to be here. Take all your stuff and go, and then we're going to come back in a couple of days and burn your house. And so,
Yeah.
that's what they did. Uh-oh.
That would be your phone, I
Is
bet.
it me? That's not good. That's not good.
If you
Sorry
need to
about
take that, you can.
No,
We'll-
that's actually the song I was listening to when I came in. So
Oh, okay. Something went wrong, huh?
Yes, but anyway, so there were a pretty good number, and there were enough white squatters in this area before the United States got title to it for it to be a problem for the Chickasaw. And so I think honestly, they thought, well, let's just cut our losses. We can't keep this. We can't keep the white people out of this land, so let's get what we can for it and, go. Which is, unfortunately, the story with Native Americans throughout history is they wind up losing.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
They wind up being forced out.
That you mentioned the Chickasaw, which were evidently here.
Yeah.
But in my growing up and listening to history or whatever, the Cherokee were more talked about than the Chickasaw.
Right.
And I don't really know why that is.
I'm not sure why that is either. That's kind of an interesting thing. The Cherokees still have there's a presence, an official tribal presence in East Tennessee.
Right.
That may be one reason why. Now the Cherokee did control some parts of Lawrence County. I think some, like, if I'm remembering correctly, east of Lawrenceburg, kind of in a line going north and south. Everything east of that, I think, was Cherokee land by the early 1800s.
Okay.
And of course, that it ebbed and flowed over the years. I don't think the Chickasaw always had control of this area. It might have been they just wound up with it at the end.
Did they war with each other any?
I'm
Maybe?
not really sure. I think they probably did. I'm going to be honest. I don't know a lot about that part of our local history because there's just not a lot of records.
Yeah, there's not any records of it, really.
Yeah, so that if someone listening knows that would be great to know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there were several white families living in Henryville. I'm descended actually from one of them, the Penningtons, and there's
Oh,
still
really?
a lot of Penningtons in Henryville.
Yeah.
And so you see them a lot in early records of Lawrence County, and so.
So once that was kind of established and we began to be controlled by, I guess, Tennessee government, the county developed how? How did it?
Well, there was a huge influx of settlers, immediately after that Chickasaw session, like when the ink was still wet. I know I've read in some places in Lauderdale County, the campfires of the Indians were still burning when the white settlers came in and took control, staked out their claim, whatever.
Really?
Yeah, and so it wasn't just like, oh well, hey, maybe we'll go. There were people waiting, like they knew we're going to.
Were there
come in.
conflicts with the Chickasaws over this, or did
I don't
they?
think there were. Not that I've read. I think most of them, they had a bit of a reservation still in Mississippi at the time.
Okay.
And there were, I think, a couple of places in western Lauderdale County, Alabama, that they maintained as a reservation for a while, and eventually they did sell those too and moved west to Oklahoma. But there was such a massive influx of white settlers, and of course the most famous of which was Davy Crockett.
Sure.
And he was in that group. He came in not long after the treaty was signed, and he said he actually got sick on Shoal Creek. He camped out by Shoal Creek about where the park is now, where
Okay.
he wound up building his mill. And he suffered for a lot of his life with recurring, I think it was yellow fever. Like he got it, and then
Didn't know that.
he would he would be well for a while, and then it would come back, and then he would. So he had some sick spells of his life that kind of set him behind. But he was always looking, of course we all know he was looking to go west his whole life. He was always looking for that next step, and so he was in an area east of here, I think close to Fayetteville, when Lawrence County opened up to white settlement. And so he came, and when he got well, he came out and looked around, and he said, this was one of the prettiest places I've ever seen. He loved it here. And so he moved his family here. He had just married his second wife, which Davy Crockett, he married the first time for love.
Yes.
And the second time for money. I'm sure he loved her too. But
For love or money?
Yes, she was very wealthy. His second wife did have quite a bit of property and money, and so.
Now, who was she?
I can't remember her name.
Oh,
you're not
Clint.
the first one to ask me that. I know. See, I get him confused because he had two wives.
Yes.
But
She was here?
Oh yes. He brought her here. He moved his whole family here. In
Okay.
fact, one of his daughters was actually born here.
Okay.
And so he came here, and he had at that time, I think he had only gone to school maybe 6 months of his entire life. He was barely able to write his name. I don't think he could read much at all. And so he said when we moved into Lawrence County, it was the Wild West, literally, because there was no law, there was no government. It was just unorganized territory that the Indians had vacated. And so he said there were a lot of, he called them bad characters, moved in among us over the period of just a few months.
How was ownership of land decided?
That's a really good question, too.
Of course, I'm a real estate guy, so I'm interested in that.
Exactly. Well, I know that a lot of Andrew Jackson's buddies were speculators.
Yes.
A lot of them owned big chunks of Lawrence County.
Okay.
They wound up. There's one guy in particular. I forget his name at the moment.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Having friends in high places.
Yes, and Andrew Jackson made a ton of money off all this too, and of course his name was on the treaty.
Yes.
He was one of the military commanders who negotiated the treaty. So, he was well taken care of. If you look at the history of Florence, it was, you see just a huge who's who of famous people for that period invested in that land, and so a lot of them they would go in, they would buy that land from the federal government, and they would pay bottom dollar for it because it was woods, it was rough, there was no improvement basically.
Right.
And so people would come in and they would stake a claim, and then they'd find out who owned it. And they'd say, I'd like to buy this, and then they, if they wanted to sell it, they'd sell it to them. And so,
Okay.
Part of the problem for Crockett was
But the first fruits were bought with guys that were capable of buying and had the
Yes.
connections to buy from the government.
Yes, a lot
that's-
of really
yeah.
wealthy planters. You think of your super wealthy guys for the time.
Wow.
And so I know Crockett got some of that land, and he actually had several parcels around the county that he was able to purchase outright, probably because his wife had some means. And we have one of the earliest letters that he wrote actually was from Lawrence County, where he was asking one of the landowners for a little more time. He said, "Look, I'll get you the rest of the money. I just need more time. My mill's not up doing what it's supposed to."
Sure.
Of course, Crockett, his whole life was dead broke. He was as poor as he could be.
That's what I'd heard.
Yeah. And so that fueled his politics in a lot of ways. One of the things that he was most passionate about when he got to Congress was taking care of these squatters. And he said, "We have thousands of people who, if they could just, own the land that they're own, if they could get out ahead of these land sharks that are exploiting the land and buying it and trying to sell it for top price, they could make a living and we could settle this country." And so he struggled his whole life, and I think his motto when he was running for office was, "He's the poor man's friend." That was what he called himself.
Yeah,
And,
he positioned himself that way. Yeah,
he did. Yeah. So he actually just it was a fluke that he got into politics. If you read what he wrote in his autobiography, he came to Lawrence County, and because there was no law and order, the people said, "Let's just set up some sort of unofficial government just to have some protection, because we're trying to build a farm and we can't do it because people are stealing our horses and there's no repercussions."
Yeah.
And this was over a period of maybe 4 or 5, 6 months. It wasn't a long period before the official government was set up, but they established a little unofficial government that they called the Shoal Creek Corporation.
Okay.
And if you look at it, it was kind of an oligarchy. They weren't exactly elected like we might think of it now. It was some of the guys got together and said, "Okay, well, why don't you be a magistrate, you be a constable, you be," and they just set up they said, "We're going to have public trust and we're going to protect people." And so Crockett became a magistrate in that way. He was one of the magistrates of the Shoal Creek Corporation.
Okay.
And he said if someone tried to mark their neighbor's hog, that was a big problem back then. If they saw their neighbor's hog and they tried to put their mark on it instead of their neighbor's, and they were proved guilty, he'd have them whipped. And that was a big punishment for him. He liked to have people whipped. So,
well, that's kind of a traditional punishment anyway. If you get in trouble, you get a whipping.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. So, he did really well with that. People trusted him. He said he bragged. He said, "None of my judgments were ever appealed." I thought, well, who would they appeal to? This is a made-up government.
That's right. That's right.
But when the state organized, when the state legislature organized our government here in 1817, it was October 21st, 1817, which I remember that's my mom's birthday.
Oh, okay.
Lawrence County's birthday, too.
Yeah.
They basically said, "Okay, well, you've got guys already serving as magistrates. Let's just make them the magistrates, and then we'll have an election after a few years."
So there's transitioned in.
Yeah, so but once he became an official magistrate, that involved a lot of, keeping records. It involved a lot of, paperwork, and of course, for a semi-literate man, that was a challenge. And so he had a guy. I think he said he had a clerk or something that helped him, and he basically learned to read and write on the fly there, so he could do this job as a magistrate.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and that all happened right here in Lawrence County. And from there, he took he went from one position to the next. He started as that, and then he was one of the first commissioners of the county to find out where we're going to have a county seat.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
Yes.
They argued about that in my little bit of learning about where the county seat was going to be.
They did.
And I understood that Crockett wanted it centered in the middle of the county.
He did.
Which would be around Gandy, is that right?
That's correct, yes. I'll say that the official, what they were supposed to do is exactly what Crockett wanted to do. The state legislature said, find the geographic center of the county or somewhere near there, and that's where it's going to be. Because the big deal for a lot of folks was travel time back then to the county seat. It had to be equitable. You couldn't have it way down in one corner or the other.
Right.
Then if somebody,
that makes sense.
Yeah,
because travel wasn't easy.
Right. They were, well, at the time, they were, roads were trails.
Yeah.
And they weren't, it was hard to get from point A to point B. And so it was logical, find it close to the center. So Crockett had actually, in anticipation of this, purchased a lot of land around what is now Gandy. And so he was really mad.
I bet he was.
When they decided, no, there were a couple of other guys, I believe.
So not only was he Crockett, he was also a real estate.
He was.
He was a real estate
he wanted
speculator.
He wanted to become a speculator too,
How about that?
of course. And so, which that would have been a great investment. If you knew where the county seat was going to be, because if wherever they held court, you're guaranteed a lot of people are going to congregate at least once or twice a month.
Yeah.
And
This kind of thing in real estate has happened from the very beginning, and is still happening today.
probably in the Book of Genesis somewhere.
Yes, still happening today.
But it was Crockett and another fellow got into a dispute. Well, no, it was Crockett and another fellow wanted it in the center of the county, and there were 5 total commissioners. The other 3, they had a good argument. They said it makes more sense to put it near the military road, okay, which was that was a new road that was being built from Nashville to New Orleans, which is roughly equivalent today to Highway 43.
Okay.
And so Military Road was built as a means of replacing the Natchez Trace. Natchez Trace, of course, at that time, had problem with outlaws on it, and it was further west. It was still kind of far away from where people lived. Mm-hmm. They wanted a quicker way. I think putting the Military Road where it wound up cut the trip from Nashville to New Orleans down by 2 or 3 days, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Yeah, it was a big difference in travel time. And so at the time Lawrence County was organized, they were building this Military Road, and they ran it, roughly where Highway 43 is today. And so 3 of the commissioners said, hey, you know what? We've got Shoal Creek for, a good water source, and we've got this Military Road that's going to be huge in our development because that's going to have people own it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put the county seat there. And it didn't hurt that those 3 guys also own land.
They also were speculators.
They were. One of the guys actually was, and I don't know, if I get the names wrong, I apologize. I believe he was a fellow by the name of Buchanan. He owned the old WDX, where the old WDXE building was, that
Mm-hmm.
corner of the square.
Yeah.
He owned that entire corner. His house was the only thing there at the
Okay.
time.
Wow.
And
Okay.
He had built it there as an inn or a tavern
Mm-hmm.
for travelers going from Nashville to New Orleans. And so, of course, his investment paid off because he owned roughly 1/4 of the square. And so
Yeah.
he wound up getting a big payoff for that. But Crockett was pretty angry. This actually...
Now, what year did that square begin to develop and to be what it became?
It started, well, they founded the city in 1819.
Okay.
That's when they, set on the location of it, and they started surveying out the lots and deciding, this is where we're going to have, if you want to buy a lot, you can get this one or this one, And so 1819 was where it started. The square itself, I'd say probably after the first courthouse was finished, which would have been early 1820s, that's when you started to see a lot of settlement around it. And you have to remember, even by the time of the Civil War in 1861, Lawrence County, I think, had maybe 600 people, or Lawrenceburg, I'm sorry, the city of Lawrenceburg had 600 people living in it, which it's tiny. That's a tiny,
That is
tiny
small.
place. So
Now, I don't think I would have thought that.
Yeah.
I would have thought it would have been more than that by the Civil War.
the whole city, more or less, was around the square. That was pretty much the business district, and
That's interesting.
so yeah, that conflict over where to place the county seat became a big problem. There were petitions that were circulating, and one of them, and these petitions, you can see them at the state archives. I've gone up and looked at them. The way they're worded is kind of funny to me because they accuse the other side of all this. Like Crockett said that one of the other commissioners was a Baptist preacher,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, this guy, very pope-like, is using his pulpit to get his followers in his church to support his petition. And of course, at that time, saying it was Pope-like was a big,
I
oh
bet.
no, we're not going to be like and so
That's interesting.
yeah, he played on a lot of, I guess you could say, religious intolerance.
You got to watch those Baptist preachers.
Exactly, and so.
I'm just kidding, you guys.
Oh yes, that's right. We love our Baptist preachers for sure. But anyway, so the three commissioners, it was 3-2 split, and they wound up winning, and so that's why Lawrenceburg is where it is today. It was a combination of the right place at the right time, and also those three guys owned property there.
That's amazing. That's pretty amazing. Well, the square, speaking of the square, of course, the original courthouse, a lot of people have really lamented its being gone and all that kind of stuff. And, especially those who love history, like yourself, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember all that. I remember when they had the urban development and all that kind of stuff. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And everybody thought it was the right thing to do at the time, and so they did. Since then, of course, there's been a lot of efforts to make and keep our historical buildings as best we can. Some of them kind of get to the place where they just cannot be restored.
Absolutely.
They just get to that place. But I said that to say that there's a lot of new money and investment going on the square right now.
There is.
There really, really is. And we're excited about that. In fact, I just put a deal together for the Ledbetter's building.
Excellent.
I just got it done. It's not closed yet, but there are big plans for that, and I'm excited about that.
That is exciting. I'm really thrilled to see, that preservation has become something that's important to the people of our town.
Yeah.
Because it's a challenge, because a lot of these buildings were not built by professionals. The historic buildings were built by people who they built, but they were also farmers, and they were also they didn't go to school to become builders, or they didn't
No, they lived here.
Exactly. And most of them, if you look around and see the number of historic houses in our county, there's not a lot of them, because
There's really not. No.
a lot of these, especially, well, if you look, just take Crockett's generation, for example, they were building for their lifetime, and they thought, who cares what happens to it after I'm gone?
Right.
And
right.
so, we don't have, there are actually a few historic log cabins still around that have been taken care of by families, but not a whole lot. And
Not a lot. No.
I've noticed a trend. A lot of our really old historic houses, especially in Lawrenceburg, were built by these German settlers who came in the 1870s.
Okay.
Of course, German people have a rich tradition of being
Craftsman.
craftsmen and
Yeah.
building quality things, which I think is kind of fascinating.
It is.
But I am super excited to see a lot of our historic downtown being put back into use and preserved, and people are taking an interest in investing in it.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think with our old courthouse. Of course, I wish we could rebuild it. I wish we had never had to tear it down.
Yeah.
But it was in awful shape.
Oh,
That's
it
something
was.
a lot of people, I think, don't remember, or didn't. Like me, it was torn down before I was born. But it had been maintained very, very. They put the least amount of money possible into taking care of it, putting Band-Aids on problems, if I understand correctly, for many years. That's going back from 1905 on up, and
Well, it was an old building.
it was.
It was an old building, and now, of course, I guess the old First National Bank building. Now it was built around 1900, I believe.
The one on the corner there.
Yes.
I think. I'm trying to remember. I know the bank itself was organized, I believe, in 1903, and there was a bank there around then. I think the current building may. I think the facade may be newer. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I asked
think
I asked Curtis Peters about this, and it's been veneered with this marble or whatever's on there.
Yes,
So the original is still there, which was brick,
that's awesome.
and so and I think it was built around right at 1900, 1901, something
That's
like that.
probably right. Because if you look at old pictures, the original veneer matches, the old Gibbs and Ballou store next to it, which I believe is, I'm not sure what it is now. I think it's the Dance Academy or something like that. But that new veneer kind of gave it a more modern look, I guess, in the 30s or 40s.
Well, so Henryville in the north part of the county was, I guess, the earliest of settlements in Lawrence County. But we had a lot of activity in other parts of the county.
We did, yes, we certainly did.
There was some mention, I was just flipping through your Facebook page a few minutes ago, there was some mention about something in Deerfield just recently. What'd you post on there?
Let's see, I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember now what I looked at. Where was that? Oh, there's your omelet for breakfast.
Oh, yes, yes. I've eaten an omelet that was part of my weight loss routine. I still eat it for breakfast every morning.
Oh, there's your little girls, by the way. They're
Oh,
good.
yes.
Oh, I want to ask you about this. This is totally off history, I guess, a little bit, but I meant to talk to you more. You know, history is some part of your personality, part of what you getting to know you, but you are an artist, evidently, too.
Well, I don't know if I'd say that or not.
You are an AI artist,
Yeah.
an artificial intelligence artist, which
An
you may
armchair
need,
artist.
you may need to explain a little bit. By the way, I'm looking at some of your work here with this, and it reminds me. Well, it's awesome for one thing.
Well, I'll tell you, I can take absolutely no credit for it. It was there. AI has become.
Wow, it's crazy.
You can do so many cool things with that now.
My son, my son needs to know about this.
Well, I'll tell you, I use for those particular pictures you're looking at, I use an app called Discord.
Discord.
Yeah, and the app is Discord, and you purchase a program through it called Midjourney, which it does have like a monthly fee, I think. So, but
Wow.
it's basically I tell it a prompt, say paint a picture of a crow or a house, whatever, and it'll do that. It'll generate a picture of what you tell it to generate, and you can toy with it and tweak it, and it's a lot of fun. Of course,
That's a creative tool. It's a creative tool.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it, and I've thought in the event that I do get to write another book someday, I would love to include some of these images maybe as a cover
Yeah, you
piece
could do your
or
own.
something.
You could do your own artwork, I
Right,
guess, with
right.
that. That's pretty interesting. Books on the horizon. Of course, you've got the history book.
I do, yes.
Is there more than one?
I know just one at the moment. And it's for sale at White and Betts.
Yes, I see it up there all the time.
and,
I've got a copy somewhere.
Oh, awesome!
I forgot where I
awesome.
put it, but I do have a copy of your book.
And then it's also at New Moon Antiques, and then also at Paper and Thread, which is on the back side of the square.
Is there a way to get it online at all, or
Yes, you can get it on Amazon, and I just released the Kindle version a couple of months ago too. So
you going to do an audio version?
I would love to. I think that would be awesome.
I noticed that you're probably an Audible fan.
I am. Oh,
I am
love
too.
Audible. I spend so much money on Audible.
I have credits now with Audible. I'm a non-reader.
Yeah.
I'm a listener.
Oh yes. Well, that's the thing. Working around the garden and the farm and walking all the time, you can listen to so many books. I thought, well, I love music, but I found myself I'm listening to the same song for the 500th time, and I'm thinking I could be learning something. I could be listening to something different.
Yeah.
And so, I love it. I think I probably do between 80 to 100 audiobooks a year. Just
Isn't that something?
yeah, and it's
Now, do you like any particular genre?
most of them, of course, is history.
I was going to say, I bet you like
Yeah.
history.
Yeah, I do love history and biography.
The biographies are good.
Excuse me. Religion books too are interesting.
I know you've listened to so many, but as far as biographies, who are some of your favorites?
Well, in 2020, I started listening to books about Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, wow.
Which
Yeah.
fascinated me because he was just you could just, every aspect of his personality, you could just go deeper and deeper and try to, he was such an interesting character.
Right.
And so I read a lot of biographies of Thomas Jefferson. There's a series by Dumas Malone.
Okay.
That's just excellent, and it was written across the span of I think 20 or 30 years. It's like
Oh,
a
wow.
6 or 7 volume, and it's all on Audible.
Okay. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, Dumas Malone's Thomas Jefferson series.
Did you do John Adams?
Yes, I read David McCullough's
I like
John
it.
Adams. It was good.
Yeah.
It was really good. I've listened the past couple of weeks. Of course, we've been in the hayfield, and so as I'm raking hay or hauling hay, I've got, my headphones on, and I listen to a few books about the Puritans in New England.
Oh, wow.
Kind of interesting.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, and some of the things they believe and how they saw different things. So, but yeah, I do love Audible. And then of course I need to also plug the library has which I'm not at the library anymore. I was at the library for a long time.
I knew you were. Yeah. What are you doing now?
I'm teaching at the Achievement Academy, which is our alternative school in Lawrence County.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, and so.
I think I had heard that, but I'd forgotten.
Yeah, we do a lot of great work up there, and we get to know a lot of kids that need help, and we get to help them out, and that's great. And but the library does have a program called Libby, which is you can get free audiobooks on it.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and so Libby is free through the state, and you can. Now, of course, it's like every other library thing. If it's really popular, you may have to wait for it, because what they do is they will get licenses, so many licenses to certain books, and so that way, it's fair to the publisher, and you're not just in there, everybody listening to the book all at once.
Right.
So
Right.
But I use Libby quite a bit too, and of course, so many of the things that I listen to are kind of weird and unusual. I guess that there's not a lot of popular demand for it, so I go to Audible for those.
Yeah, I understand. I have a hard time reading books for just sheer entertainment. I like something that's actually true. I like biographies, history, that kind of thing. But I'm not into just novels for.
Right.
I'm
not much into fiction myself.
Fiction, yeah. That's why I couldn't find the word. But well, I'm not a fiction fan. I don't know why. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. That kind of thing. People enjoy those, but I just find it more fascinating to look into something that's historic or.
Oh, absolutely.
What about of course some of those past presidents, things like that. What about some more recent people, biography wise? Anything stick out?
Well, I'm trying to remember what all I've listened to. Mind if I consult my phone here? I keep a list of it. As excuse me, I went through a period where I did listen to, I think I listened to Sam Walton's book. And that was pretty interesting. Prince Harry's new book was pretty interesting.
I bet it was interesting, but he's kind of weirded me out.
Yeah, he threw a lot of people under the bus.
He sure did. Well, hey, brother, listen, I hate to cut us off, but we're going to run out of time here, and we're going to hit a hard break at 8 o'clock. But man, I'm going to have you back.
Yeah.
We didn't get through talking.
Yeah, that's
We didn't
right.
get through talking.
That's right.
You've been listening to Friends and Neighbors here, which is going to be the Wednesday, 8 o'clock, 8 to 9 hour. Friends and Neighbors, and Clint Alley. A great guy, and we've got a lot more to talk about. I appreciate you coming in this morning.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
We had a
I
great
really
time,
enjoyed
and
it.
I'm looking forward to having you back again sometime soon.
Absolutely.
And I'll see you on the road.
Yes.
Out walking.
That's right.
Good deal. Clint Alley, everybody, and check out the book, Lawrence County
History
Trivia. You can find it on Amazon.
That's right.
And of course, at Alan Bett's office downtown. And where else did you say?
New Moon Antiques.
New Moon
and
Antiques.
Paper and Thread.
Yeah, Paper and Thread. Good deal. Good deal. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you being in.
Thank you.
Hang around for a
enjoyed it.
minute while we get signed off, and we'll see you out the door. Okay, buddy?
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.